Hello and welcome to the MBA Rewired podcast, where we explore major factors that are impacting what today's careers, leadership, and management education looks like. In today's episode, we are exploring a career path that is increasingly becoming integral for businesses, and especially strategy in businesses, which is the people and organizations career path. As companies deal with rapid changes in terms of hybrid work, digital transformation, and other factors, managing people is becoming an increasingly important leadership capability. To understand what all of this means in practice, we are joined by Dr. Ashya Singh, who is an alumni of IMI Delhi and also currently working as a director with Boston Consulting Group. Hi, Arshia, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great
So,
to be
you
here.
have a really interesting career path. You are working with BCG currently, and you also teach at business schools, which gives you a very unique perspective in terms of how industry works and also what is happening in B schools currently. So, before we get into all of that, please tell us a little bit about your career journey and also what made you choose this particular career path.
So I'll be honest, right? I didn't choose HR by choice, but if I look back to the 14, 15 years that I've been working, I feel like now more than ever, the human resource space is integral to organizations, as you said. With AI and technology being at the forefront, we are replacing output with outcome, which means that to drive those outcomes, you need a certain kind of skill set in human beings that continue to, one, be the largest cost for any organization, but two, also the drivers of strategy and outcome. So the work that I'm doing currently and have been doing for, more than a decade is really Global Reward, which while part of human resources, also sits at the epicenter of business strategy, finance, and HR. Which gives you a vantage point in terms of how you need to understand the commercial breadth and the human depth. Because today I feel like I said, output is being replaced by outcome, and what we reward does get repeated. So to drive a certain culture, which would eventually drive the business strategy, I think the human resource function will continue to become more and more integral to shaping that for companies today.
Right. So apart from this, we see that increasingly now business strategies talk about how managing talent is so important, right? So are there any other factors that is making it so strategic today?
So look, there's a lot changing in the world, and obviously, we know change is constant, but the pace of change has only accelerated, right? There's continuous geopolitical unrest. There are changing social norms. There's technology that's being a disruptor. So in terms of the skill or why human resources or talent management is important is because we need to stay contemporary. We need to stay ahead of the curve, and that's just giving us a baseline. Being ahead of the curve or staying contemporary right now is not an advantage. It's really not. It's us just being able to thrive in the status quo, because 2 days later there'll be something else. And nobody is insulated from that change that's happening macroeconomically, that's impacting every business and therefore impacting every individual. So even in terms of the regulatory landscape, right, there's a lot that's changing. Because if you think about, the amount of emphasis on data privacy, the amount of emphasis on transparency, equally there's this very sort of centered nationalist sentiment that's come in, where global companies, you'd have local markets saying that, oh, we want to stay within ourselves. Why should we use a Microsoft? Why should we use a Zoom? These are all. So I feel like awareness of what's happening in the world, the direction towards which the world is going, and paring back from that in terms of what it means for your business, therefore the kind of talent you need to drive that outcome. It's always a future back approach, I feel, which works. So to know, where your business would be in 2030, and therefore start building the skill now for that is where, the whole talent management, human resources, rewarding the right behaviors comes into the picture.
Yeah. So, it's very interesting because you've mentioned so many different aspects of what this career path looks like. But I think a lot of aspiring, students or young people who want to work in this area, they're very uncertain of what actually it entails, right? So, what does a typical day in your work look like? What does this career path, for somebody who's interested in getting into it, what should they expect?
So I'll talk about, since you're asking me about a day in my job. So my job, like I said, is global reward, which means think of it as sitting at an intersection of being, let's say, a diplomat who's working with CFOs and CHROs across 60 different countries to try to achieve a locally relevant yet globally coherent outcome. So when I say reward, it's essentially what the employee value proposition needs to be to drive the right behaviors needed to drive the business strategy and outcomes. So my work is not about spreadsheets. Spreadsheets is hygiene, which is why I would say that numerical literacy, especially for HR students across a lot of B schools, I have noticed even now, surprisingly, that there is a little bit of hesitation. There's a little bit of, fear of numbers, especially with people specializing in HR. So I would say numerical literacy, comfort with data analytics, comfort with artificial intelligence, but then empathy. Because when I say that, think of it as, a diplomat going across all of these markets to make sure that, you're influencing without authority. Because in the end, the matrix structure is what has become a reality versus a typical pyramid or a typical hierarchical organization structure. And in a matrix structure, collaboration is the special sauce. So alignment is the outcome versus decision making. So in my role, I may not always get to be the decision maker, which is far less complex than, having those 70 odd people align with what you're recommending, see those curves and peaks and troughs in that journey. But the magic is when that outcome is delivered, it gets 100% adopted because everybody is on.
So it's very interesting that you say this because I was just coming to the next question. I'm sure you meet a lot of young aspirants who are, gunning to get into this role. So, and now we have a lot of accelerated change, like you mentioned. So when a student is, or a young aspirant is an MBA student, what kind of skills should they be then looking at developing? And do you see a skill gap when you're talking to these new aspirants?
So 3 things come to mind. One, like I said, foremost is empathy. I think everybody's acknowledged this. The second would be numerical literacy, like I said. Third would be analytics and technology. So if I talk about empathy, the reason for that is, like I said, aptitude to a large extent has already and will continue to become replaceable. Emotional intelligence won't. And to be able to influence without having the authority as starting candidates, it is the relationship skills, the human depth that candidates it'll give them that advantage. And yes, I do see that as a gap because, this incoming generation have grown up in an environment of technology. The way they interact with another human being isn't at the level where organizations would possibly like it to be. So that's one. The second, in terms of numerical literacy and commercial depth. So you have to, I think B schools need to invest in 2 areas, but in parallel, not distinct from one another. So it is reading and understanding the P&L along with what it does to your people strategy. So it's P&L and people combined. So to be able to, at the end of the day, I'm a strong believer that data can speak any language you want it to speak. You give me a data set, I can spin any story out of it as long as I know what that outcome is, which is why some of my questions before we started this podcast, right? So I feel numerical literacy. And when I talk about data analytics and technology, I don't mean that you need to be a coder. You don't need to make an app of your own. But yes, be a strong user, because again, I don't think AI will take your jobs, but the next person who's using it better than you will definitely take your job.
Right.
So you have to use it in a way that it gives you pace, it gives you value, but it's not going to give you blue ocean strategy. It's going to give you the mind space to think critically and to think of new ideas. Because in the end, at least as of right now, the new ideation is not happening from AI. There are a lot of hallucination errors and things like that. They'll package it up as something that's new, but it won't really be. So the business context, so it's literally joining the dots that you would be able to think of as an advantage. So these 3-4 areas, I feel, if students are able to, really take the bull by the horn and move forward, I think that's really going
So
to be
these are the
critical.
skills they should be looking at developing while they're doing an MBA.
Yes, and equally, I feel like somewhere we need to teach people how to deal with friction, how to deal with differences in opinions. If I go back and talk about my own role, like I said, you won't, and even in seniority today, I don't think that decision making will continue to be the way it was. So, leadership has also changed from command and control to brain to heart, etc., right? So, if you are an empathetic leader today, you're not going to say my way or the highway.
Right.
You are going to have an expertise based opinion, but the tact will be in rallying everyone together and along, being flexible to change and pivot to meet what's best for the greater good. So putting your ego aside, not feeling too emotionally attached to your opinions, and then rallying everyone together. Because in business, the CFO will say one thing, the CHRO will possibly say something that's slightly different. The business guys who are actually bringing in the revenue or selling will say something that's a little different.
Yeah.
So, yes, have the expertise and the depth of your expertise to say, okay, as the expert, this is what I feel will work. But you're running the business. So from a people, business, money, let's see what can be coherent. Because often the issue is not in the fact that, the proposal or whatever you're hoping to drive is incorrect. The issue is that it doesn't get adopted.
Right.
And the reason it doesn't get adopted is because there's no buy-in. So now to get that buy-in prior to rollout, where you will have to go through friction, you will have to, be flexible to change, is what I think these schools should start also focusing on, because I feel that is becoming the reality. So, like I said, we are not hiring for those that will be led. We are hiring for leaders.
Right.
And we're hiring for people who'd be able to influence without authority, because the output can come even without that individual to an extent. So how will the individual then drive the outcome? I think that's what these schools should focus on.
Got it. So, we've talked about that there's a rapid change in how organizations are now having to adapt to things. We've talked about the new skills that young aspirants would require to build. So, in the light of all of this, how are now organizations managing talent, or effectively? How is it changing?
Yeah. So it's a very relevant question. I think career journeys are no longer only vertical, they're very zigzag. And that brings a lot of depth to the value a certain talent pool gets to the organization. So, like I said, what is changing is that I don't think many organizations have that erstwhile very hierarchical, vertical, pyramid shaped structure anymore. A lot of organizations have moved towards matrix structures. What that means is that you're breaking barriers and silos intentionally across the organization. There is a lot more inclusion because organizations see value in it. Those that are in the C-suite today may not be AI black belts, but the incoming batches or the new workforce which has the skill in a deeper fashion, I think they are being made part of strategic discussions so that they just aren't told the what to do, but the why.
Right.
So unless they know the why, I don't think that outcomes would benefit the business either. So there is that openness now much more than before. Equally, a lot of organizations are also moving to discarding labels. What that means is, especially if you think of, let's say, any generalist consulting track in any organization, right? At the hiring point, they're not hiring for specialization anyway. Your generalists that may be staffed on, a people project, you may be staffed on private investment sort of project, you may be in a supply chain project, it may be across industries, it may be in one industry. And that strategically is the model that a lot of consulting organizations have had. You hire generalist strategic management consultants. You're not hiring for specialization. So often, there's always this debate of, what does the workforce look like?
Yeah.
Is it T-shaped where there's breadth across various domains? Is it V-shaped? I personally believe that it is the T-shape that's going to be the way forward, because specialization in a very niche domain and that expertise is in my pocket. But to be able to have that big picture bird's eye view to say, okay, so zooming in and zooming out is, I think, what will work. And structures are reflecting that, both to enable pace and decision making, to meet the aspirations of the incoming workforce, because it is a multi-generational workforce, and we do have boomers and Gen Zers who need very different things, and to keep them engaged to drive the right outcomes for the business is also critical for organizations to think of. So it's a very unique opportunity that organizations have to really optimize the value that each demographic in their talent pool 100% will bring. But it's not a one size fits all. So their structures, both in terms of their organization, equally their pay structures, right? I'm a strong believer of what you reward gets repeated. And pay and reward is one of the strongest levers of the culture you want to drive in an organization. So regardless of, the values that you have being flashed up on posters and screens, if you show me the pay structure of an organization, I'll tell you the values that they really have. So are you really rewarding collaboration, or are you just saying it?
Yeah.
Are you actually rewarding individualized competition, which in the end may not work for the greater good? And again, it's very specific to every organization. There's no right answer.
Yeah.
But the fact that, you use all available levers, whether it's your structure, whether it's your pay, whether it's the flex or whatever, your entire EVP, to really optimize a multi-generational workforce, a workforce that needs space, a business that needs space, I think all of that will be the reality, and in fact already is.
Yeah. So of course we see structures changing, and like you said, there are multiple different generations now working together. So in the light of this, do we have any newer emerging roles in this domain now?
Yeah, I mean, I myself have been very surprised. I had never heard of a role called AI ethicist. We have roles like these now being, posted and things like that. So 100%. One, there are new roles that are emerging, which is a very positive thing to see and hear and boast about, because there's also a lot of anxiety in terms of, roles being chopped or certain roles
Yes.
becoming fully
Obsolete,
automated
yeah.
and obsolete, right? So net, despite technology and AI, there will be far more roles net than there were before. It's
Mhm.
just that those roles may be different. Our expectations from existing roles might also change. So also equally given, the kind of regulatory landscape, geopolitical landscape that we have, compliance, legal, um, ethical use of, data
Right.
privacy, all of that will become increasingly important because organizations are at reputational risk also.
Mhm. So we have newer roles coming up, of course, and the structures are changing. So in the light of all of this now, how or what kind of courses or programs should B schools introduce or change to sort of prepare students, young aspirants, to get into this field?
I would strongly encourage some ways to build soft skills a lot more.
Mhm.
I've already spoken about, commercial depth across all courses. To be able to, you don't have to be a finance expert, but you need to be able to read annual reports,
Right.
P&Ls, understand the business, understand the strategy, not just today, but, what could be the strategy 5 years later, what the shape of the business is likely to be. And so then, therefore, what are the skills that you need today? So, um, commercial depth, understanding the business, soft skills in terms of, having the emotional quotient and empathy to influence outcomes without necessarily having the label to decide. That's extremely important. Being okay in a ecosystem that has heat without drama,
Mhm.
playing that role of, bringing everybody on board with tact, um, is important. I really feel, the relationship orientation is critical. One thing that, one framework that I've seen a huge unlock in is they say that relationship excellence is credibility into reliability into intimacy divided by self interest. Whether it's consulting, whether it's any other organization where you're building relationships, I've found this to be very powerful if you're able to really understand what it means. So, credibility comes from expertise.
Mhm.
What is it that people will always think of you for? Are you the problem solver? Are you the crisis person? Are you an absolute expert in a domain? What
Mhm.
is it that you're synonymous with? What's your USP? What are you known for? Whether you're in the room or outside the room, what is it that people say about you behind your back? That's
Mhm.
credibility. And work on your strengths, strengthen your strengths, right? Maybe some kind of reflective courses for B schools to, introduce that helps people realize what their strengths are and continue to strengthen them. The second was reliability. Reliability comes from, I'm there for you, I'm going to hold your hand through
Mhm.
this, you're not in this
Yeah.
alone, I'm there. So, responsiveness, um, making your stakeholders feel like you're in their corner, you're there to help them. Intimacy is just get to know the person, connect at a human level.
Mhm.
A lot of times in organizations and a lot of, B schools also have tenured applicants, right? They're laterals
Mhm.
who get placed from campus. So when we talk about intimacy, it's invest time in relationships. I I don't see that happening as much as, I did even in, let's say, my parents' generation. Everything was relationships. Like you often said that, a deal or a merger is not between two businesses, it's between two people
Mhm.
and how they connect. It's all about trust.
Right.
And divided by self interest means that when you're making these connections,
Mhm.
have the other person's interest at the forefront. So this equation helps build trust. And in the end, because you would join an organization, it's all going to be anchored on trust based on these facets. So if there are ways in which, B schools can simulate what that could look like in the corporate ecosystem, and it's not just, and with hybrid working and things like that, there's a larger risk of people being siloed.
Right.
There's a larger risk of people, sitting in a corner, head down in the laptop, turning it off at 4. I'm not glamorizing or deglamorizing it. It's just a feeling that, there is somebody I can rely on in this organization or in my team, and that will go a long way.
So B schools need to prepare their students for all of this, how to handle all of this and cater programs around this.
I think there's a little bit of baseline assessment also needed. I don't know. See, with the landscape of, the world changing, even the way not just organizations are hiring, but even the way B schools are selecting candidates based off of an aptitude test, I don't know how relevant that is or will be in times to come. Because organizations are not hiring for aptitude anymore. I don't think they are. Or at least I don't think they will going forward, or they should. Because aptitude sits with me. I can have like a panel-based expertise from AI, right? But what I need is for that human being to really rally everybody together. It's the human touch that will be that advantage going forward. So a baseline assessment, and then, I remember even in IMI, we used to have an org lab course and things. I don't know if it still exists. But things like that help them make connections, continuously drive the message that, these peers in your classroom are going to be your networks going forward, and invest in relationships authentically. I think, all this cold calling and networking over LinkedIn and things like that, none of that has that denominator of low self-interest. So be a giver. You can't, climb mountains alone at the end of the day. It does take a village. And that risk of, you don't know what you don't know. I'm the expert. I'll tell you. You'll be surprised what the other person knows.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think just focusing on some of that. But equally, I think don't just teach frameworks. Like I said, also teach friction. That it's your outcome. I think even typically the way, even when I teach in B schools, I've also been guilty of this, is that if I ask a question and somebody comes up with, fabulous framework that really ticks all the boxes, my question literally ends there. I'm very rarely asking, okay, but now how are you going to sell it to the CFO, to the business, to the CHRO? What's your tact there? How are you going to bring alignment? Because it's only then that you'll add value in terms of driving the outcome.
Right.
Output, I'll get. Now that framework I can get way more easily than I could earlier. But it's, okay, who drives this forward is what I'm looking for now.
So, now that you have this industry insight, you've been teaching at B schools and meeting students and all of these things, if you had to start today as somebody who's, looking to build a career in this domain, what are the skills that you would build, or what are some of the things that you would probably do differently?
I think the most important skill for me in retrospect would be just be adaptable and learn continuously. Just these two things. If you're not continuously learning today, like I said, continuous learning is literally just keeping me at hygiene levels. It's not giving me any kind of advantage. If I'm not continuously learning, I'm at an acute disadvantage, both because of the multi-generational workforce, but also the pace of change that's happening in the business. So keep reading. And like I said, AI has stolen you of the excuse that I don't know, or I don't have this information, or no one taught me. Now, the kind of access that people have to information, any domain that they want to know more about, they can, right? So learn continuously and adapt, because things are changing so fast that we don't know what the next 3 months, let alone 3 years,
Right.
would look like. So build your skills in a way that you continue to thrive in where the world is moving towards. And I think have fun along the way. Don't take yourself so seriously. I took myself very seriously. And in retrospect, I wish I hadn't, because in the larger scheme of things, a lot less matters.
Right.
So know your story. I think ChatGPT CVs have become very fatiguing. Have a story, be authentic. People can see through the pretense,
Right.
even in interview stages, right? So have your story, be authentic in the way that you tell it, own it. I don't think that there's any stigma associated with gap years anymore.
Mhm.
There's no stigma associated with, oh, you're an engineer, but then why did you do HR? I remember when we were interviewing, there used to be this, how am I going to explain this?
Yeah.
And let's think of an answer.
Yes.
I think authenticity, building trust, having your story, and really genuinely knowing why you are joining the organization. Because, like I said, we're equally being assessed by candidates today. So, tell us why you chose us and the value that you hope to drive as part of being with us. And I think that's what's going to really help.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Arsha. This has been really interesting, and we've learned a lot about what all of HR entails, and it's just more than what people think. It's effective talent management and also getting everybody on board, like you said. It's a lot of alignment work. And also, thank you so much for coming back to campus.
Yeah, no, thanks. I don't know if I've given any pearls of wisdom. I wouldn't like to think so, but it's always nice to come back to campus.